Hello, I'm Natasha. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the British economy, so a slightly different topic, concentrating solely on Britain. However, I think that it is fitting to discuss this given the upcoming general election, which has been scheduled for the 4th of July. So what are the key challenges facing Britain's economy? The first one is the level of debt that Britain has. In January 2024, Britain's public sector net debt was £2,685 billion, or 97.7% of its GDP. This is the highest level of public sector debt since 1961. This is a significant amount of debt, and obviously on a basic level, what the government is spending far outweighs what it receives, and this has a number of associated problems. Firstly, it leads to higher debt interest repayments. This is the cost of servicing the debt. Debt interest spending reached £101.5 billion in 2022, or 4.4% of GDP. Obviously, this money could be spent elsewhere if it was not spent on servicing debt. I think that it is important to note that even with a national debt of 200% of GDP in the 1950s, the UK avoided default and even managed to set up the welfare state and NHS. However, the reduction in debt as a percentage of GDP at this time was mainly due to a prolonged period of economic growth. So in order to manage Britain's debt, we clearly need a robust plan to ensure that the debt is manageable and paid off alongside an economic growth strategy. The second challenge that the UK faces is that of inflation. Food price inflation and energy costs have been one of the main issues in Britain. Prices at the supermarket checkout and other household bills have risen quickly over the past 2 years. Inflation was over 11% in 2022, and it is apparently just over 3% now. The rise in costs were blamed on the COVID pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the latter which has had a huge impact on energy and food prices. There was also a shortage in the number of people available to work in the UK, which pushed up the cost of hiring people. However, I personally think that the UK government likes to blame other countries for its own shortcomings regarding the management of the British economy. According to a member of the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee, Britain is one of the most susceptible countries to energy price shocks. This is because it is more reliant on gas to heat homes and keep lights on than other European countries. The UK imports most of its gas via pipelines from a handful of suppliers, whereas the US produces most of its own gas. Clearly, being reliant on imports is not a good thing for the British people. In addition, when we look at food prices, latest official figures show UK food inflation was 9.2% in November, compared to 7.9% in France and 6.1% in both Italy and Germany. This is partly because the UK has to import a lot more of its food than other European countries, said the chief economist at the Office for National Statistics. It seems to me that if we want to reduce inflation and have a long-term strategy for this, then we need to be producing the majority of our food and energy. Self-sufficiency, not blaming other countries for our own economic mismanagement. I think that this would have other benefits for the economy, such as leading to more jobs for British people if we were to focus on UK production. Another key challenge for Britain is unemployment. So officially, just over 4% of people in Britain are unemployed, about 1.4 million people. But the unemployed represent only a small part of the nearly 11 million working age people who are not in a paid job. About 9 million of them are not called unemployed. That is because they are not actively looking for work or available to start a job. Instead, these people are called economically inactive. This is crazy, 11 million out of a population of 70 million, and around 2.2 billion goes on paying unemployment benefits. Clearly, we need a plan to get people back into work and also create better skilled jobs for people who are economically inactive. And this leads me to my next key challenge, which is that of GDP growth. GDP growth is a key challenge for the UK economy. UK gross domestic product is estimated to have increased by 0.6% in Q1, following declines in the previous 2 quarters. There are 2 main aspects of economic growth: increasing aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So what can the government do to increase these 2 factors? Cutting taxes to increase disposable income and encourage spending therefore leads to increased demand. The government can increase aggregate supply in investing in infrastructure, therefore increasing production and labour productivity. Now, growing the economy is not an easy task, as there are many different factors at play. I personally don't think it is just about cutting taxes and people spending more. I think there needs to be a long-term plan for sustaining economic growth, and I think this needs to be considered alongside other factors such as our trade deficit. The UK generally imports more than it exports, meaning that it runs a trade deficit. A related concern is that importing more goods or services suppresses demand for comparative domestic products, leading to job losses at home. And as we already know, we do have a significant level of unemployment in Britain already. But I do think that there needs to be a focus on developing UK industry and incentivising UK businesses to develop homegrown companies, leading to more jobs for British people and sustainable economic growth. And I think this needs to be tied in with the ownership aspect of Britain, which is the next key challenge that I want to discuss. So a key challenge for Britain is foreign ownership. There is no specific law governing or restricting foreign investment in Britain. This is topical at the moment, given the fact that Royal Mail, which is owned by International Distribution Services plc, a British company, is likely to be taken over by a Czech billionaire. I personally do not think that this is a good thing for Britain's economy overall, and I will do a separate video on this which goes into more detail. However, from my own research, allowing foreign companies to invest so heavily in Britain leads to significant detrimental damage to the British economy. Some examples of this being a loss of British jobs, loss of tax revenues for the government, loss of research and development in Britain, and a loss of skill base in Britain. However, I will consider this in detail in another video. Please let me know what you think of the key challenges facing the British economy and how best these can be overcome in the comments below.